So Michelle and I have worked together for many, many years because Michelle was originally a paediatric nurse and was here, left and came back. But tell me a bit about your role during the pandemic and how your natural leadership style had to change, because it's a big deal, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was a pretty big deal. So I'm the Chief Nurse and Director of Allied Health Professionals. Very, very proud of having that job. Good history with Whittington and wouldn't be the Chief Nurse anywhere else. And when the pandemic hit, I realised that the job title that I had not had to probably pay as much attention to was I was also the Director of Infection Control. So suddenly everyone looked at me to give all the answers, and Slater, it was me who said to the comms team, go for it. So I'm really pleased you came. But that was probably one of my easier decisions, I must say. And what changed during the pandemic is very early on, normal leadership style, very collaboratively, we discussed everything together, and suddenly we're in major incident mode and it's command and control. And it was literally just telling people what to do. And that doesn't sit comfortably with me at all. So very different.
So how did you manage at the beginning? You had to make all the decisions, you had to redeploy staff. How did you actually go about doing it?
So we had a really clear structure, and I didn't do it alone. We had the exec team, who many know. We very methodical. We worked through what all the challenges were, and we had a plan. We had key people who would go, right, it's your job to do this. Our finance director was responsible for PPE supply, so he knew what he needed to do because the money wasn't important, but PPE was. And I think we just designated roles for everyone. And then that included, frontline work. I spent time, laminating things, just walking around the place, doing whatever was helpful. We took stores out of the storeroom to the wards to stop them because there wasn't enough porters to do that. So we did that, the senior nurses, and as well as the managers and the medical director. It was just, we all were in it together.
Hands on deck.
Yeah.
Did you have to make any personal sacrifices?
So yes, so probably within a week of the pandemic, Jonathan, our strategy director, had responsibility for sorting out hotel accommodation for staff who might need to stay in the hotel because they couldn't go home because there was COVID at home and they wanted to continue to work. And we got it in place, and the next day my son, who was 21, so not a child, rang me up at work and said, I think I've got COVID, what shall I do? And he was fine, which is great, but I realised I needed to go and stay in a hotel for 2 weeks. So I spent 2 weeks at the Premier Inn as we went into national lockdown. So that television, Boris announcing lockdown, I was in the Premier Inn at that point.
Gosh,
which is pretty hard. Yeah.
And I mean, maybe tell us what was really difficult about the whole sort of you having to change your leadership style, being in charge of infection control, staying in a hotel for some of the time. What was really hard? We'll come on to the warm and fuzzy afterwards.
Yeah. The hardest bit, and it continues to this day, is about visitors. Yeah. I'm a children's nurse. I work with families. That's just the way we are. That's our values. It's the way our being. And suddenly, and I remember the Sunday, I was in the hotel, I have to get out of the hotel, so I spent the day working, and we realised the hospital was full of patients with COVID, and we stopped visitors, and I had to make that decision, and it's the hardest one that I've had to come back to over the 2 years, and it will remain the hardest, because it just goes against everything that we do. But we're open a bit to visitors, and we will keep going, so.
Thank you. And maybe tell people here what are some of the things that make you feel all sort of warm and fuzzy, that some of the...
Yeah. So this might sound a bit, just a bit way out, I suppose. So a year, obviously, and we're nearly 2 years now tomorrow, but a year ago we had a sort of remembering session, event in the garden where the fountain is. And if you don't know where the fountain is, you can go on a scavenger hunt tomorrow and find it, as many people don't know where it is. We had just a time for staff to come together, for our local population to come. Our local mayors came, as well as various other people, to just think about the past year, and also to, really remember the people who have lost loved ones, and we'd lost some staff to COVID, and, we needed that time. And they asked me to read the book Sad by Michael Rosen. And of course, many of you know he has a personal connection with both COVID and Whittington. So I read the book halfway through. If you haven't read it, it's incredibly moving. I just couldn't continue, and I thought I'm going to have to stop and just collect my thoughts. And I looked up, and there was about 100 people in the garden, and I knew I was going to cry, and obviously everyone else knew that, and they literally leaned in as if they were going to hug me. And I know that sounds a bit fuzzy, it's a great word, but I generally felt the warmth of every single person in that garden. And that is Whittington Health to its essence, because it just meant so much. And of course, then I could collect my thoughts and my composure, and I read the rest of the book. So a very special moment.
Thank you very much. I think that's a wonderful way to end. Thank you.
Thank you.